The artificial gravity of Horizon 7 research station hummed softly beneath Marcus Chen's feet as he walked the pristine white corridor. His fingers scrolled through the morning's research assignments on a holographic data pad, the translucent blue screen casting a faint glow on his concentrated face. Another day of routine xenobiological research awaited him, or so he thought. Marcus had always been something of an outlier in the scientific community. At 32, he was younger than most senior researchers, with a reputation for asking questions that made his colleagues both uncomfortable and intrigued. His mixed heritage, a blend of Chinese, Brazilian, and Norwegian ancestry, had given him a unique perspective that translated well into xenobiological research. Where others saw barriers, Marcus saw fascinating puzzles waiting to be solved. The corridor curved slightly, its design a perfect blend of human engineering and alien architectural consultation. Soft luminescent panels traced the walls, changing colours subtly to mimic optimal working conditions for the station's diverse crew. Marcus barely noticed. His mind was deep in the latest genetic sequencing data from the Orion research sector. That's when he first saw her. Zarola stood nearly 2 feet taller than Marcus, her body a living sculpture of iridescent blues and silvers. The Krelthari diplomatic representative was unlike any alien Marcus had studied. Her exoskeleton seemed to shimmer with an inner light, intricate patterns moving beneath her skin like living fractals. Most humans found her appearance unsettling, but Marcus saw beauty in her complex biological design. Their eyes met. For a moment, everything stopped. Zarla's massive, multifaceted eyes, each one a complex network of crystalline lenses, locked onto Marcus with an intensity that made the corridor feel suddenly airless. Her breath, visible as a slight shimmer in the air, caught in her throat. Marcus felt the weight of her gaze, a look that seemed to penetrate far deeper than mere visual perception. Then she began to cry. It wasn't a soft, subtle weeping. These were profound, body-racking sobs that echoed through the station's carefully designed acoustic environment. Her crystalline tears fell like liquid diamonds, striking the polished floor with soft, musical sounds. Each droplet seemed to contain entire universes of emotion, pain, hope, desperation, and something else Marcus couldn't quite identify. Station personnel materialized as if summoned by her emotional storm. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the station's lead geneticist, appeared first. Her hand touched Marcus's shoulder, her grip surprisingly firm. "Come with me," she whispered, her voice tight with an emotion Marcus couldn't quite place. "What's happening?" Marcus asked, still watching Zarella, who seemed caught between overwhelming grief and something that looked remarkably like hope. No one answered. The Krelthari diplomatic guards moved with practiced efficiency. They surrounded Zarella, their movements precise and controlled, yet Marcus could see the tension in their postures. Something significant was happening, something far beyond a simple emotional breakdown. As Marcus was guided away, he caught one more glimpse of Zarella. Her tears had stopped, but her gaze remained fixed on him. Those complex eyes seemed to hold entire galaxies of meaning, a message just beyond his comprehension. "Sir," one of the guards said to Marcus, "we'll need you to come with us for a preliminary screening." It wasn't a request. Marcus Chen, who had spent his entire career studying the intricate biological mysteries of alien species, was about to become the greatest mystery of all. He just didn't know it yet. The station continued its silent hum, indifferent to the moment that would change everything. The secure research wing of Horizon 7 felt different from the rest of the station. Walls that appeared solid shifted with layers of holographic security protocols. Marcus sat in a minimalist interrogation room, more reminiscent of a cutting-edge medical facility than an investigative space. His datapad had been confiscated, leaving him with nothing but his thoughts and the growing sense that something extraordinary was unfolding. Dr. Elena Rodriguez entered the room, her movements deliberate and controlled. She carried a slate-grey data crystal, its surface alive with microscopic information patterns. "We need to talk about what happened earlier," she said, her tone professional but laden with an undercurrent of excitement. Marcus leaned forward. "I've been waiting for someone to explain why an alien diplomat would break down in tears the moment she saw me." A thin smile crossed Elena's face. "It's complicated," she began, inserting the data crystal into a holographic projector. The room filled with three-dimensional images of biological data, genetic sequences dancing in mid-air like complex, living artwork. The projections told a story of destruction. Genetic maps showed a species in total collapse. Marcus recognized the patterns. Something was systematically destroying the Krelthari from within. Each generation showed more degradation, more complexity lost. It was like watching a beautiful, intricate machine slowly falling apart. "The Krelthari are dying," Elena said bluntly. "Not just declining, dying. Their entire species has less than 10,000 individuals left. Every generation loses more genetic diversity, more biological complexity. What you're seeing is a species on the absolute brink of extinction." Marcus studied the holographic data. Genetic sequences twisted and collapsed, showing how each successive generation became more fragile. "This looks like a cascading genetic failure," he murmured. "But the complexity of the breakdown is unlike anything I've ever seen." Elena nodded. "That's why you're here. Your medical scan from this morning showed something unexpected." Before she could elaborate, an alert flashed on the room's communication panel. Encrypted messages scrolled rapidly, their contents hidden behind layers of security protocols. Elena's posture changed instantly, more tense, more alert. "We don't have much time," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "The Krelthari have been trying to solve this genetic puzzle for generations. Entire research colonies have been dedicated to finding a solution. Billions of credits, decades of work, and nothing." The hologram shifted, showing images of Krelthari research facilities. Massive orbital stations, planet-side laboratories, generations of scientists working with desperate intensity. Each image told a story of brilliant minds confronting an impossible challenge. "Why me?" Marcus asked. The question hung in the air, heavy with implication. Elena's response was interrupted by a sudden commotion outside the room. Muffled voices, the sound of rapid movement. Something was happening. "Your genetic profile is unique," she said quickly. "Your mixed heritage has created a biological signature we've never seen before. The way your immune system adapts, the complexity of your cellular structures, it's unlike any human we studied." The door to the room hesitated. For a moment, it seemed to shimmer between solid and transparent. Marcus could see shadows moving outside, shapes of people or beings, moving with urgent purpose. "The Krelthari believe you might be their last hope," Elena continued. "Not just a potential medical solution, but something more. Something they've been searching for across generations." A loud crash echoed through the station. Alarms began to pulse, not the standard safety alerts, but something more complex. Something that spoke of immediate, critical danger. Elena grabbed Marcus's arm. "We need to move," she said. "Right now." Outside the room, The station of Horizon 7 was transforming. What had been a routine research facility moments ago was now becoming something else entirely. A battleground. A turning point in galactic history. And at the center of it all was Marcus Chen, a researcher who had no idea how dramatically his life was about to change. The first explosion rocked the station, sending a clear message. Whatever was coming, it would not be stopped easily. The emergency medical lab hummed with an intensity that felt almost alive. Holographic displays surrounded Marcus, each screen showing different aspects of his genetic structure. Sophisticated scanning equipment traced every microscopic detail of his biological makeup, turning his body into a landscape of scientific discovery. Dr. Elena Rodriguez worked alongside 3 Krell-Thari scientists, their movements synchronized with an almost musical precision. Each of the alien researchers moved differently. One had limbs that seemed to shift and flow like liquid. Another had multiple appendages that could manipulate delicate equipment with impossible grace. Yet they all focused on Marcus with the same intense concentration. "Your genetic structure is extraordinary," said Carolyn, the lead Krell-Thari geneticist. Her voice translated through a neural interface, carrying both scientific precision and a hint of something deeper, hope, perhaps even reverence. Marcus watched the holographic displays, trying to understand the complex patterns dancing around him. His genetic map looked like an intricate 3-dimensional puzzle with adaptive markers that seemed to move and reconfigure themselves in ways he'd never seen before. "Most human genetic profiles are relatively static," Carolyn continued. "Yours is alive, dynamic. Each cellular component seems to have multiple potential configurations." Elena added her own observation. "It's like your genes have built-in problem-solving capabilities. They don't just respond to threats, they anticipate and prepare for multiple potential challenges simultaneously." The implications were staggering. Where most genetic structures followed predictable patterns, Marcus seemed to be constantly recalibrating, creating backup systems and alternative pathways at a microscopic level. A sudden alert flashed across the screens. External sensors detected multiple approaching vessels, some human, some of designs Marcus didn't recognize. The station's defensive systems began to activate, energy shields shimmering into existence around the research complex. "We don't have much time," Elena said, her voice tight with urgency. "Various factions have learned about your unique genetic profile. Some want to study you, some want to protect you, and some—" She didn't finish the sentence. Carolyn manipulated a series of holographic controls, bringing up detailed comparisons between Marcus's genetic structure and the deteriorating Krell-Thari genome. The differences were stark. Where the Krell-Thari genetic map showed increasing fragmentation and loss, Marcus's genetic structure displayed remarkable flexibility and resilience. "Your immune system doesn't just defend," Carolyn explained. "It learns, it adapts. Each interaction becomes a blueprint for future responses. The genetic markers we've identified could potentially reset our entire reproductive system." Marcus struggled to process the information. "You're saying my genes might save your entire species?" Before anyone could answer, the station shuddered. Something was happening outside. A confrontation was imminent. "The genetic complexity goes beyond simple immune response," Elena interjected. She brought up a series of molecular diagrams that looked more like abstract art than scientific data. "Your genetic structure contains adaptive markers that can potentially communicate with cellular systems in ways we've never seen before." Carolyn's translator conveyed a sense of wonder. "It's as if your genetic code is a living communication network. Each cell doesn't just respond to threats, It learns, adapts, and creates new pathways of survival. Another impact rocked the station. Defensive systems were engaging something, or someone, attempting to breach their perimeter. "We need to move you," Elena said, her hand already preparing a portable genetic preservation unit. "The information contained in your genetic structure is now the most valuable resource in the known galaxy." Marcus felt a mix of excitement and terror. He was no longer just a researcher. He had become something else entirely, a potential key to saving an entire species, a living repository of genetic potential that multiple factions would kill to control. The holographic displays continued their dance of color and complexity, a visual representation of the extraordinary potential contained within a single human body. Outside the lab, the first sounds of conflict began to echo through the station's corridors. The diplomatic quarters of Horizon 7 looked more like a battlefield than a negotiation space. Holographic displays tracked multiple incoming vessels, each representing a different galactic interest. Marcus sat at the center of a circular conference room, surrounded by representatives from species he had only read about in classified research documents. To his left, a Vornax diplomat shifted its crystalline body, light refracting through its translucent form. To his right, a Terran Coalition representative watched with calculated intensity. Zarola stood slightly behind Marcus, her protective stance making it clear that something fundamental had changed. "The genetic profile we've discovered represents more than a medical breakthrough," announced Ambassador Lyra Chen, a veteran human diplomat with decades of interstellar experience. Her voice carried the weight of diplomatic history. "It is a potential solution to one of the galaxy's most complex biological challenges." The Vornax representative's communication device translated its response with a melodic undertone. "The genetic information cannot be controlled by a single species. Its potential is too significant." Marcus realized he had become more than just a researcher. He was now a diplomatic asset, perhaps even a potential point of conflict between multiple galactic powers. Elena Rodriguez stepped forward, her datapad projecting complex genetic models. Marcus's unique genetic structure contains adaptive markers that go beyond traditional understanding of biological systems. It's not just about saving the Krell-Thai. It's about understanding a new paradigm of genetic potential. A new vessel entered the station's sensor range. The holographic displays flickered, showing advanced stealth technologies that suggested a highly sophisticated approach. Something about its signature felt different, more aggressive, more determined. "We have multiple incoming vessels," announced the station's artificial intelligence. Its voice remained calm, a stark contrast to the rising tension in the room. "Diplomatic clearance protocols are being challenged." Zarella moved closer to Marcus. Her earlier emotional breakdown now made sense. She had recognized something in him that represented hope for her entire species. "They will try to take you," she whispered, her translated words carrying a mix of protection and warning. The station's defensive systems began to pulse. Energy shields recalibrated, preparing for potential conflict. Marcus could feel the weight of multiple galactic interests converging around him. Ambassador Chen continued her explanation. "The genetic markers in Marcus's profile suggest a level of cellular adaptability we've never seen before. It's not just about resistance or immunity. It's about active biological problem-solving at a genetic level." The Vornax diplomat's form shifted, creating complex light patterns that suggested deep contemplation. "The information must be shared. Controlled distribution prevents potential weaponization." A new communication channel opened. An encrypted transmission from an unknown source began to stream through the station's communication systems. Marcus watched as complex data streams danced across the diplomatic room's displays. "Someone is attempting to access the genetic research," the station's A announced. Multiple simultaneous breach attempts detected. Elena moved to a control panel, her fingers dancing across holographic interfaces. "We're blocking the unauthorized access, but these are sophisticated intrusion attempts. Someone wants this information badly." Marcus realized he was no longer just an observer. He had become the center of a complex interstellar drama. His very existence now represented a potential turning point in galactic biological understanding. Zarala's hand touched his shoulder, a gesture of protection, of connection. "You are more than they understand," she said softly. Her multifaceted eyes reflected complex emotions: hope, fear, determination. The station's defensive systems continued to pulse. Outside, the vastness of space held its breath, waiting to see how this moment would unfold. Multiple vessels approached, some with diplomatic clearance, some hovering just outside official communication ranges. Each represented a different vision of what Marcus's genetic profile could mean. He was no longer just Marcus Chen, xenobiological researcher. He had become something else entirely, a living key to potential galactic transformation. The research laboratory resembled a cathedral of scientific discovery. Crystalline walls shifted and adapted, creating multiple layers of sterile environments. Marcus stood at the center of an intricate medical setup, surrounded by the most advanced genetic research equipment in the known galaxy. Carolyn, the lead Krell-Thurry geneticist, moved with a grace that defied human understanding. Her multiple appendages manipulated complex holographic interfaces, each movement precise and calculated. "We are preparing to extract the first comprehensive genetic sample," she announced, her translator rendering her words with clinical precision. Marcus felt a mix of scientific excitement and personal vulnerability. Sophisticated medical probes hovered around him, each one capable of examining his genetic structure at a molecular level. The room hummed with potential: the potential to save an entire species, the potential to unlock mysteries of biological adaptation. "Your genetic markers are unlike anything we've ever seen," Elena Rodriguez said, reviewing multiple holographic displays. "It's as if your cells have built-in problem-solving capabilities. They don't just respond to threats. They anticipate and prepare for multiple potential challenges simultaneously." The first extraction began. Microscopic nanoprobes entered Marcus's bloodstream, mapping his genetic landscape with unprecedented detail. Each probe was more than a simple medical instrument. It was a sophisticated data collection device designed to understand the complex adaptive mechanisms of his unique genetic structure. Zarella watched from a protective observation point. Her multifaceted eyes captured every moment of the procedure, reflecting a complex mix of hope and scientific intensity. Marcus caught her gaze. There was something more than professional interest in her look. A deep, almost spiritual hope that this moment might change everything for her species. "Preliminary results are extraordinary," Carolyn announced. Her appendages danced across holographic controls, bringing up complex genetic maps that looked more like abstract art than scientific data. The adaptive markers in Marcus's genetic structure can potentially reset cellular degradation processes. A holographic model of the Krell-Thurry genetic structure appeared, showing generations of progressive breakdown. Beside it, Marcus's genetic map demonstrated something entirely different: a living, dynamic system of constant adaptation and renewal. "It's not just about stopping the genetic decline," Elena explained. "These markers suggest the potential for complete genetic reconstruction. We're looking at the possibility of reversing generations of biological degradation. The station's medical systems began to compile comprehensive data. Complex algorithms processed the genetic information, creating predictive models of potential treatment approaches. Each simulation showed increasingly promising results. Suddenly, an alert flashed across the medical displays. Multiple incoming vessels were approaching the station, some with diplomatic clearance, others hovering just outside official communication ranges. The research had attracted attention from multiple galactic powers. "We're detecting multiple unauthorized access attempts to our research channels," the station's artificial intelligence announced. Its voice remained calm, a stark contrast to the rising tension. Marcus watched as the genetic extraction continued. Each moment revealed more about the extraordinary potential of his cellular structure. His body was more than a biological system. It was a complex, adaptive network that seemed to learn and respond in ways no one had previously understood. "The genetic adaptability is unprecedented," Caravan continued. "Your cellular structure doesn't just defend against threats. It creates new pathways of survival. Each interaction becomes a blueprint for future responses." Zarella moved closer to the observation window. Her translator conveyed a mix of scientific precision and deep emotional resonance. "This is more than a medical breakthrough," she said softly. "This is hope." The medical probes completed their comprehensive scan. Holographic displays erupted with complex data, each screen showing different aspects of Marcus's extraordinary genetic landscape. The research team fell silent, overwhelmed by the implications of what they were discovering. Outside the laboratory, the station's defensive systems began to pulse. Something was approaching, something that recognized the significance of the breakthrough happening within these crystalline walls. Marcus stood at the center of it all, no longer just a researcher, but a potential key to saving an entire species. The moment felt both intensely personal and galactically significant. The first true breakthrough was about to be revealed. The attack came without warning. Horizon 7's hull shuddered as multiple boarding vectors penetrated the station's defensive systems. Alarms blared in a complex symphony of technological warning, holographic displays flickering with emergency protocols. Marcus found himself surrounded by a defensive team, their movements synchronized with military precision. "We're dealing with a multi-faction extraction attempt," announced Commander Sarah Reyes, her voice calm despite the chaos. Advanced combat suits materialized around the research team, adaptive camouflage shifting to match the station's interior. Zarella moved with surprising speed, positioning herself protectively near Marcus. Her crystalline exoskeleton seemed to harden, transforming into a living defensive system. "They cannot take you," she said, her translator conveying a mix of determination and barely contained fury. Elena Rodriguez activated a series of emergency protocols. Holographic firewalls began to seal critical research data, creating multiple layers of encryption that would challenge even the most sophisticated extraction teams. The first breach team arrived. They were not human, a sophisticated combat unit from the Vornax Collective, their bodies a living blend of organic and technological systems. Energy weapons charged with a distinctive blue-white glow, capable of cutting through most known station defenses. Marcus realized he was no longer just a researcher. He had become the most valuable asset in the galaxy. "The genetic data must be protected at all costs," Elena whispered, passing Marcus a small data crystal. "If anything happens, this contains a complete backup of our research." Commander Reyes directed her team with surgical precision. "Defensive Formation Alpha 7, she commanded. The human security team moved as a single unit, their combat suits creating an adaptive protective barrier around Marcus and the research team. The Vornax Breach team encountered their first surprise. The station's defensive systems were not what they expected. Adaptive algorithms created shifting defensive patterns, making traditional breach strategies ineffective. Fascinating, Marcus muttered, watching the defensive systems work. Even the station's technological infrastructure seemed to be learning and adapting in real time. Zarla's combat capabilities became immediately apparent. Her body transformed, multiple appendages becoming sophisticated defensive instruments. She moved with a grace that defied traditional understanding of combat, her actions more like a complex dance than a traditional fight. They want more than just the genetic data, Zarala explained during a momentary lull. They want to understand the potential of your genetic structure. Some see it as a weapon. Others see it as the key to species survival. The station's artificial intelligence began to play its most sophisticated game. Holographic decoys appeared, creating multiple false targets. Communication channels became a maze of misinformation and adaptive misdirection. Marcus found himself being moved through a series of emergency corridors. Each pathway seemed to shift and change, making traditional tracking impossible. The station itself had become a living defensive system. Your genetic structure is teaching us something fundamental, Elena said during their rapid movement. It's not just about survival, it's about continuous adaptation. The Vornax extraction team discovered that traditional technological superiority meant nothing against an adaptive system. Their sophisticated weapons found themselves recalibrating constantly, unable to lock onto consistent targets. Commander Reyes's voice cut through the chaos. "Prepare for emergency quantum displacement," she announced. The words suggested something beyond traditional escape protocols. Marcus felt a strange sense of calm. Everything he had studied as a xenobiological researcher had prepared him for this moment. His entire career had been leading to this precise intersection of scientific discovery and survival. Zarala touched his shoulder, her crystalline eyes reflecting multiple layers of emotion. "You are more than they understand," she repeated, a phrase that was becoming a profound truth with each passing moment. The station's defensive systems reached a critical point. Multiple adaptive protocols converged, creating a defensive matrix that seemed to defy traditional understanding of technological warfare. As the extraction team made their final approach, Marcus realized something fundamental. This was no longer just about genetic research. This was about demonstrating a new paradigm of survival. The final defensive protocol activated. Reality itself seemed to shimmer. The medical chamber glowed with an ethereal light, complex medical systems forming a technological cocoon around Marcus. Holographic displays tracked every microscopic change in his body, transforming the healing process into a living work of art. Carolyn and Elena Rodriguez worked with synchronized precision, their movements creating a delicate dance of scientific intervention. The procedure to develop the Krell-Thari cure was more than a medical treatment. It was a fundamental reimagining of biological restoration. The genetic transfer process is unlike anything we've attempted before, Elena explained, her voice carrying a mix of scientific excitement and profound responsibility. Multiple nanoprobes moved through Marcus's system, carrying the adaptive genetic markers that could potentially save an entire species. Zarala watched from a specially designed observation point, her multifaceted eyes capturing every moment of the complex procedure. Her presence was both a scientific observation and a deeply personal vigil. Marcus felt the transformation happening at a cellular level. It wasn't painful. more like a profound recalibration of his entire biological system. Each moment brought new sensations, new understanding of the human body's extraordinary potential. "We're not just treating genetic damage," Carolyn announced, her translator conveying layers of scientific nuance. "We're teaching the Krell-Thari genetic system to heal itself. Your adaptive markers are creating new pathways of cellular regeneration." The medical systems began to compile comprehensive data. Complex holographic models showed how Marcus's genetic structure was actively engaging with the Krell-Thari genetic challenges. It was less like a medical procedure and more like a sophisticated biological conversation. Warnings began to emerge on the medical displays. The procedure pushed the boundaries of known medical science. Marcus's body was doing something unprecedented, actively rewriting genetic protocols at a fundamental level. "The risk is significant," Elena warned. "This procedure could permanently alter your genetic structure. We're talking about a level of biological transformation that goes beyond traditional medical intervention." Marcus understood the stakes. This was more than a medical treatment. This was a potential turning point for multiple species. His body had become a living laboratory of biological possibility. The station's medical systems began to create predictive models. Each simulation showed increasingly complex scenarios of genetic restoration. The Krell-Thari genetic degradation wasn't just being stopped, it was being actively reversed. Zarla's translator conveyed a mix of scientific precision and deep emotional resonance. "This is hope," she repeated, the words carrying the weight of her entire species' survival. Complex energy systems began to pulse around the medical chamber. The procedure was entering its most critical phase. Marcus could feel his cellular structure actively engaging with the Krell-Thari genetic challenges, creating new pathways of biological understanding. "We're seeing something extraordinary," Carolyn announced. Her multiple appendages moved across holographic controls, tracking the unprecedented genetic interaction. "Your genetic structure is not just adapting, it's teaching." The medical displays erupted with complex data. Each screen showed different aspects of a biological miracle in progress. The research team fell silent, overwhelmed by the implications of what they were witnessing. Marcus felt a profound connection to something larger than himself. His body was becoming a bridge between species, a living testament to biological potential. The pain was minimal, more like a deep, fundamental recalibration of his entire being. "The genetic transfer is showing remarkable stability," Elena reported. Her voice carried a mix of scientific excitement and deep reverence. "We're not just treating genetic damage. We're demonstrating a new paradigm of biological interaction." Outside the medical chamber, the station seemed to hold its breath. Multiple scientific and diplomatic systems tracked the procedure, understanding its potential galactic implications. Zarala moved closer to the observation window. Her crystalline form reflected the complex medical lights, creating a living prism of scientific hope. "You are changing everything," she whispered. The final genetic transfer began. Reality itself seemed to shimmer at the microscopic level, rewriting fundamental biological understanding. Marcus Chen was no longer just a researcher. He had become something else entirely, a living bridge between species, a testament to the extraordinary potential of biological adaptation. The reconstruction of the Krell-Thari civilization happened with a speed that defied historical precedent. Marcus watched from a specially designed observation chamber, his body still recovering from the extraordinary genetic transfer that had saved an entire species. Entire planetary systems came alive with renewed vitality. Where once there had been slow genetic decay, now there was rapid regeneration. Krell-Thari cities that had been dying began to rebuild, their architecture reflecting a newfound hope and complexity. "We're seeing a complete societal regeneration," Elena Rodriguez explained, reviewing multiple holographic displays. "It's not just biological restoration, it's a fundamental reimagining of an entire civilization." Zarella stood beside Marcus, her crystalline form now showing subtle changes. The genetic restoration had affected not just our species' biological structure, but their entire way of perceiving reality. Her eyes reflected multiple layers of understanding: scientific, emotional, philosophical. "You have done more than save us," she said, her translator conveying layers of meaning. "You have shown us a new way of understanding survival." Scientific delegations from across the galaxy arrived to study the extraordinary transformation. Marcus found himself at the center of a diplomatic and scientific hurricane. His genetic profile had become the most studied biological system in known galactic history. The Terran Coalition declared the genetic transfer a milestone of interspecies cooperation. Scientific institutions created entirely new fields of study based on the discoveries made during Marcus's treatment. Xenobiological research would never be the same. "Your genetic structure demonstrated something fundamental about biological adaptation," explained Dr. Carolyn, the lead Krell-Thari geneticist. "It's not just about survival, it's about continuous transformation." Marcus struggled to understand the full implications of what had happened. His body had become more than a biological system. It was a living testament to the potential of adaptive complexity. Diplomatic channels across multiple star systems began to change. The successful genetic transfer became a symbol of what was possible when species truly collaborated. Old conflicts began to seem less significant in the face of such profound scientific achievement. "We're rewriting the understanding of biological potential," Elena told him during one of their many debriefing sessions. "Your genetic structure has shown us that adaptation is not just a defensive mechanism, it's a form of communication." The Krell-Thari planetary systems began to demonstrate extraordinary levels of recovery. Entire ecosystems that had been on the brink of collapse started to regenerate. The genetic restoration was creating ripple effects far beyond initial predictions. Zarella explained the deeper cultural implications. "In our history, we saw genetic degradation as a form of inevitable decline," she said. "Now we understand it as an opportunity for transformation." Scientific conferences were held across multiple star systems. Marcus found himself both a subject of study and a symbol of interspecies potential. His genetic profile was discussed, analyzed, and celebrated. The medical breakthrough became more than a scientific achievement. It represented a new way of understanding biological potential. Species across the galaxy began to reassess their understanding of genetic adaptation. "We're not just talking about medical treatment," one galactic scientific panel concluded. "We're discussing a fundamental reimagining of biological potential." Marcus's own body continued to demonstrate extraordinary adaptive capabilities. Medical researchers discovered that the genetic transfer had fundamentally altered his biological system, giving him capabilities that went far beyond traditional human limitations. Diplomatic relations between multiple species began to shift. The successful genetic transfer became a symbol of what was possible when different civilizations truly collaborated. Old conflicts began to seem less significant in the face of such profound scientific achievement. Zarella remained a constant presence. More than a diplomatic representative, she had become a bridge between species. Her relationship with Marcus represented something more than professional collaboration. It was a living demonstration of interspecies understanding. "You have changed everything," she would often say, her translator conveying multiple layers of meaning. The observation chamber where Marcus spent much of his recovery became a place of pilgrimage. Scientists, diplomats, and representatives from multiple species came to understand the extraordinary journey that had begun with a simple, unexpected moment in a station corridor. As galactic systems continued to transform, Marcus Chen realized something fundamental. He was no longer just a researcher. He had become a living bridge between species, a testament to the extraordinary potential of biological adaptation. The universe watched and learned